The corporate party had turned wild. Truth or dare had crossed every professional line. And now all eyes locked on the man who always sat alone in the corner. The quiet one, the one nobody really knew. Olivia Reed, the office extrovert, had been dared to provoke him in front of everyone. She walked over, grinning with that fearless energy she was known for, and asked loud enough for the whole room to hear. "You seem to be good in bed. Are you married?" Everyone expected him to blush, to stammer, to look away. Instead, Daniel Moore met her eyes and said calmly, "No, I'm still waiting." The room went silent. Who was he waiting for? Daniel Moore had worked at Crescent Analytics for nearly 4 years, and most people still didn't know much about him beyond his job title. He was the kind of person who showed up on time, finished his work without fanfare, and left before the small talk could start. He didn't join the lunch groups. He didn't linger by the coffee machine. When someone asked about his weekend, he gave answers so brief they discouraged follow-up questions. It wasn't rudeness exactly. It was more like he had drawn a line around himself and preferred that no one cross it. Olivia Reed was the opposite. She had only been with the company for 18 months, but she moved through the office like she owned it. She knew everyone's coffee order, remembered birthdays, organized happy hours, and had a laugh that carried across the entire floor. People gravitated toward her. She made things feel lighter. If there was a party, Olivia was at the center of it. If there was a joke, she was the one telling it. She thrived on connection, on energy, on the kind of noise that made a room feel alive. The two of them had barely spoken. They worked in different departments, crossed paths only in meetings or the occasional elevator ride. Olivia had noticed Daniel, of course. It was hard not to. He was always alone, always quiet, always somewhere on the edge of things. She had tried once or twice to pull him into conversation, but he answered in single sentences and looked away quickly like he had somewhere else to be. She stopped trying after that. Some people just preferred to be left alone. The company party was held at a rented loft downtown, the kind of place with exposed brick and dim Edison bulbs that made everything look warmer than it was. It was the end of the fiscal year and management had gone all out. There was catered food, an open bar, a playlist someone's intern had put together. By 9 o'clock, the mood had shifted from professional courtesy to something looser, something reckless. Someone suggested karaoke. Someone else suggested poker. Then Marcus from accounting stood up on a chair and shouted that they should play Truth or Dare. The room erupted. People cheered. People groaned. But no one left. The game started slow. Harmless dares and softball questions. Then it escalated. Someone had to text their ex. Someone had to chug a drink in under 10 seconds. Someone admitted they had lied on their resume. The laughter got louder. The dares got bolder. Olivia was in her element, egging people on, volunteering herself when things got too tame. She thrived in chaos like this. Then it was her turn again. Marcus grinned at her from across the circle, his eyes gleaming with the kind of mischief that meant trouble. He pointed at Daniel, who was sitting near the back wall with a glass of water in his hand, looking like he wanted to disappear into the furniture. Olivia followed Marcus's finger and felt her stomach drop just slightly. She knew what was coming before Marcus even said it. "I dare you," Marcus said loud enough for everyone to hear. "To go over there and mess with him." He jabbed his finger toward Daniel again. "Make him blush. Make him squirm. I don't care how you do it. Just make it good." The room erupted in laughter and cheers. People turned to look at Daniel, who was staring down at his glass like he hadn't heard a thing. Olivia felt the weight of every eye in the room. She could have refused. She could have asked for a different dare. But she had built her reputation on never backing down, on being the one who always said yes, who always played along. So she stood up, put on her best grin, and walked across the room. Daniel didn't look up until she was standing right in front of him. When he did, his expression didn't change. He just watched her, calm and unreadable, like he was waiting for something he had seen coming from a mile away. Olivia felt a flicker of doubt, but she pushed it down. This was just a game. It was supposed to be fun. She leaned against the wall beside him, tilted her head, and let her voice carry just enough for the crowd to hear. "You seem to be good in bed," she said, her tone playful, teasing. "Are you married?" She expected him to stammer. She expected him to turn red, to laugh it off, to give some awkward response that would let everyone move on to the next round. That was how these things went. But Daniel didn't do any of that. He looked at her for a long moment, his face completely still. Then he said in a voice that was quiet but clear, "No, I'm still waiting." The laughter stopped. The room went silent so fast it felt like the air had been sucked out of it. Olivia stared at him, her smile frozen on her face. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know what he meant. But something in the way he said it, something in the flatness of his tone told her it wasn't a joke. It wasn't a comeback. It was the truth. Someone coughed. Someone shifted in their seat. Marcus tried to laugh, but it came out forced and uncomfortable. Olivia took a step back, her hands suddenly cold. She wanted to say something to lighten the mood, to turn it into a punchline, but the words wouldn't come. Daniel didn't look angry. He didn't look embarrassed. He just looked tired. He set his glass down on the windowsill, stood up, and walked toward the door without saying another word. No one tried to stop him. The room stayed quiet until the door clicked shut behind him. Then the noise came back all at once. People talking over each other, trying to laugh it off, trying to pretend the whole thing hadn't just turned strange and heavy. Olivia went back to her spot in the circle, but she didn't feel like laughing anymore. Someone handed her a drink. Someone made a joke about the next stare. She smiled and nodded, but her mind was somewhere else. She kept replaying the moment. The way Daniel had looked at her, the way his voice had sounded. "No, I'm still waiting." What did that mean? Who was he waiting for? The party went on, but Olivia barely noticed. She left an hour later, earlier than she usually would, and spent the entire ride home thinking about that one sentence. By the time she got to her apartment, she had convinced herself she was overthinking it. It was just a weird response. Maybe he was socially awkward. Maybe he didn't know how to handle being put on the spot. Maybe it didn't mean anything at all. But when she lay down in bed that night staring at the ceiling in the dark, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had crossed a line she hadn't even known was there. She had thought it was harmless. She had thought it was funny. But the look on Daniel's face hadn't been funny. It had been something else, something quiet and raw and real. And she had been the one to put it there. She turned over, pulled the blanket up to her chin, and tried to sleep. But the guilt sat heavy in her chest. And no matter how many times she told herself it was just a game, she couldn't make herself believe it. Olivia woke up the next morning with the conversation still sitting heavy in her mind. She showered, made coffee, went through her usual routine, but none of it distracted her. Every time she stopped moving, she saw Daniel's face again. The stillness in his expression. The way he hadn't flinched, hadn't smiled, hadn't given her anything to hold on to except those 5 words. "No, I'm still waiting." She had replayed the moment so many times, it had started to feel like a scene from someone else's life. But the guilt was hers, and it wouldn't let go. By the time she got to the office, she had made up her mind. She was going to apologize. It was the right thing to do. She would find Daniel, tell him she was sorry, and move on. Simple, clean, professional. But when she walked past his desk on her way to the break room, he wasn't there. His chair was empty, his monitor dark. She checked again an hour later, still nothing. It wasn't until almost 11 that she saw him step out of the elevator, his face as neutral as ever, carrying a folder under one arm like it was just another Monday. Olivia watched him from across the room. He didn't look upset. He didn't look angry. He looked exactly the way he always did, quiet and distant, like the party had never happened at all. Maybe that was worse. She waited until he sat down until he opened his laptop and started typing. And then she walked over before she could second-guess herself. She stopped at the edge of his desk and cleared her throat. Daniel glanced up at her, his expression unreadable. For a second, neither of them said anything. Then Olivia spoke, keeping her voice low so the people nearby wouldn't hear. "Hey," she said, "do you have a minute?" Daniel looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. He stood up without a word and led her toward one of the small conference rooms near the back of the floor, the kind with glass walls and a table that fit 4 people. He held the door open for her, then closed it behind them. Olivia sat down, and Daniel took the seat across from her, his hands folded on the table. He didn't say anything. He just waited. Olivia had rehearsed this on the way over, but now that she was sitting in front of him, the words felt clumsy and insufficient. She took a breath and started anyway. I wanted to apologize, she said, for last night. That whole thing with the dare, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. It was supposed to be funny, but I realize now it wasn't. Not for you. Daniel didn't react right away. He just looked at her, his expression calm but distant, like he was deciding whether or not to say what he was thinking. Finally, he spoke. It was a game, he said. I get that. People do stupid things at parties. I'm not angry. Olivia felt a small flicker of relief, but it didn't last. There was something in the way he said it that made her feel like he wasn't finished. She leaned forward slightly, her hands pressed flat against the table. But she asked. Daniel tilted his head, considering her. Then he said, but you asked me a question in front of everyone. And when I answered honestly, the whole room went quiet. Not because I said something shocking, because nobody expected me to be serious. That's what bothers me. Not the question, the assumption that I wouldn't have a real answer. Olivia felt the words land like a weight in her chest. She hadn't thought about it that way. She had thought about how awkward the moment had been, how uncomfortable she had felt, but she hadn't really considered what it had been like for him. She looked down at her hands, then back up at him. You're right, she said quietly. I'm sorry. I should have thought before I opened my mouth. Daniel nodded, but he didn't smile. He didn't tell her it was okay or that she shouldn't worry about it. He just accepted the apology and let the silence stretch between them. Olivia felt the urge to fill it, to say something else, to make it less heavy, but she forced herself to sit still. After a moment, Daniel spoke again, his voice softer this time. You want to know who I'm waiting for? He said. It wasn't a question. Olivia looked at him surprised. She hadn't expected him to bring it up. Only if you want to tell me, she said carefully. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his eyes drifting toward the window. I'm not waiting for a specific person, he said. I'm waiting for myself to be ready to be the kind of person who can let someone in again without being afraid of what happens if I lose them. Olivia felt something shift in her chest. She didn't know what to say. Daniel kept talking, his voice steady but distant, like he was telling a story that had happened to someone else. My wife died 6 years ago, he said. Cancer, it happened fast. One day we were planning a vacation and 8 months later she was gone. We have a daughter. She was 4 when it happened. She's 10 now. Olivia's throat tightened. She wanted to say something to offer comfort, but anything she could think of felt hollow and useless. Daniel didn't seem to need her to say anything. He kept going, his gaze still fixed somewhere outside the window. I've been doing this alone for a long time, he said. Work, home, my daughter. Repeat. I don't go to parties. I don't make friends. I don't date. Not because I don't want to, because I don't know how to do it without feeling like I'm betraying the life I had before. He finally looked back at her, his expression unreadable. So, when you asked me if I was married and I said I was still waiting, I meant it. I'm not ready. Maybe I never will be, but I'm not going to pretend I don't think about it. Olivia felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back. She didn't have the right to cry. This wasn't her pain. She swallowed hard and spoke carefully. I didn't know, she said. I'm sorry. I had no idea. Daniel shrugged. A small movement that didn't quite reach indifference. Why would you? He said. I don't talk about it. I don't put it on display. Most people here don't even know I have a daughter. That's by choice. I keep my life separate because it's easier that way. Olivia nodded slowly. She understood now why he had always been so distant, why he never stayed for happy hour, why he answered questions in one-word sentences. He wasn't being rude. He was protecting himself. Thank you for telling me, she said. I know you didn't have to. Daniel gave a small nod. You apologized, he said. That means something. Most people don't. They just move on and hope I forget. Olivia felt the guilt twist tighter in her chest. She had been one of those people for years, making jokes without thinking, saying things because they sounded clever, never stopping to wonder if they landed wrong. She had never thought of herself as careless. But sitting here now, looking at Daniel's calm, tired face, she realized she had been. Not intentionally. But that didn't make it better. She wanted to ask more. She wanted to know about his daughter, about his wife, about how he managed to carry all of that and still show up to work every day like everything was fine. But she didn't. Because this wasn't about satisfying her curiosity. This was about him trusting her enough to share something real. And the least she could do was respect that without pushing for more. Instead, she said, "If you ever want to talk, I'm here. No games, no jokes, just listening." Daniel looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll keep that in mind," he said. They sat in silence for a few more seconds, and then Daniel stood up. Olivia followed, and they walked back out into the office together. People glanced at them as they passed, but no one said anything. Olivia went back to her desk, and Daniel went back to his. The rest of the day passed quietly. No one mentioned the party. No one mentioned the dare. But Olivia couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, she sat on her couch with a glass of wine she didn't really want and stared at the TV without watching it. She kept replaying the conversation in her head. The way Daniel had spoken so calmly about something so devastating. She thought about the way she had lived her life up until now. Loud and fearless and always pushing forward, never stopping to wonder if anyone around her was quietly falling apart. She had always thought of herself as the kind of person who made things better, who brought energy and lightness into a room. But maybe that wasn't always true. Maybe sometimes she was just noise. Over the next few days, Olivia found herself watching Daniel more carefully. Not in a creepy way, just noticing things she had never paid attention to before. The way he always ate lunch alone at his desk. The way he left exactly at 5 every day. No exceptions. The way he never joined the group chats or the afterwork drinks. She had always assumed he was antisocial, maybe even a little cold. Now she understood that he wasn't cold at all. He was just carrying something heavy and he didn't have the energy to pretend otherwise. She also started noticing the way other people treated him. The jokes they made when he wasn't around. The way they rolled their eyes when he declined an invitation. The way they talked about him like he was a ghost. Someone who existed on the edges of the office but didn't really matter. It bothered her more than she expected. She wanted to say something to defend him, but she didn't know how to do it without making things worse. One afternoon, she saw him in the break room pouring coffee into a plain white mug. She walked over, grabbed a cup for herself, and stood next to him. They didn't say anything for a moment. Then Olivia spoke, her voice casual. "How's your daughter doing?" Daniel glanced at her, surprised. Then he smiled just a little. It was the first time she had ever seen him smile. "She's good," he said. "She's in 5th grade now. Loves soccer, hates math. Pretty normal kid stuff." Olivia smiled back. "That sounds nice," she said. Daniel nodded. "It is," he said. Then he picked up his mug and walked back to his desk. It was a small moment, barely worth remembering. But to Olivia, it felt like something had shifted. Not between them exactly, more like inside her. She had spent so long being the loudest person in the room, the one who made people laugh, the one who kept things moving. But maybe there was more to being a good person than just being fun. Maybe it also meant knowing when to be quiet, when to listen, when to let someone else take up space without filling it with noise. She didn't know if she and Daniel would ever be friends. She didn't know if he even wanted that. But she knew she wasn't going to make the same mistake again. She wasn't going to treat people like punchlines. She wasn't going to assume that just because someone didn't talk about their pain, it didn't exist, and maybe that was enough for now. The weeks that followed were quieter than Olivia expected. She didn't push Daniel for more conversations. She didn't try to insert herself into his life or force a friendship that neither of them had asked for. But she did start paying attention in ways she never had before. She noticed when people made jokes at his expense. She noticed when someone rolled their eyes because he declined another invitation. And she noticed how easy it was for everyone to forget that silence didn't always mean someone had nothing to say. One Thursday afternoon, Marcus cornered her by the printer with that same grin he had worn at the party. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and said loud enough for a few people nearby to hear, "So, what's the deal with you and the hermit? You two friends now or something?" Olivia looked at him, her expression flat. She didn't smile. She didn't laugh. She just said, "His name is Daniel, and yeah, we talk sometimes." "Is that a problem?" Marcus blinked, clearly not expecting that response. He shrugged, trying to play it off. No problem. Just thought it was funny, that's all. Guy barely says 2 words to anyone. Olivia picked up her stack of papers and turned to face him fully. Maybe that's because no one bothers to listen when he does, she said. Then she walked away before he could respond. It was a small moment, barely worth remembering. But it felt significant to her. She had spent so much of her life being liked, being the person everyone wanted at their table, that she had never really stopped to ask what the cost of that popularity was. How many jokes had she laughed at without thinking? How many people had she dismissed because they didn't fit into the version of fun she had built her identity around? She didn't have an exact number, but she knew it was more than 0, and that bothered her. She started making small changes. She stopped joining in when people gossiped about Daniel. She stopped laughing at jokes that punched down. She started asking quieter coworkers how their weekends were, and actually waiting for the answer. It wasn't much, but it was something, and it made her feel less like she was just coasting through her days on autopilot. Daniel noticed. He didn't say anything about it directly, but Olivia could tell. He started nodding at her when they passed in the hallway. He replied to her emails with more than one-word answers. Once when she asked if he wanted a coffee refill, he said yes. It was progress. Slow, careful progress. The kind that didn't demand anything from either of them, but left the door open just in case. Then one Friday, something shifted. Olivia was leaving the building at the end of the day when she saw Daniel standing near the entrance, phone pressed to his ear, his expression tight with frustration. She slowed her pace, trying not to eavesdrop, but close enough to hear the general tone. He was talking to someone about picking up his daughter. Something had fallen through. He kept saying he understood, but his voice had an edge to it that she had never heard before. When he hung up, he stood there for a moment, staring at his phone like it had just delivered the worst possible news. Olivia walked over, her bag slung over one shoulder. "Everything okay?" she asked. Daniel looked up at her, and for the first time since she had met him, he looked genuinely stressed. "My babysitter canceled last minute," he said. "I have to pick up my daughter from school in 20 minutes, but I'm supposed to be on a call with a client in 10. I don't know how to make both things work." Olivia didn't think. She just said, "I can take the call for you." Daniel frowned. "You're not on this account." Olivia shrugged. "I've sat in on enough of these to know the basics. Just send me the file and tell me what they need to hear. I'll handle it. You go get your daughter." Daniel stared at her like he was trying to figure out if she was serious. Then he nodded slowly. "Are you sure?" Olivia smiled. "I'm sure. Go." Daniel sent her the file, gave her a 30-second rundown of what the client was expecting, and then left without another word. Olivia went back upstairs, took the call, and somehow managed to keep the client happy despite knowing only about 60% of what she was talking about. When it was over, she sent Daniel a text, letting him know everything had gone fine. He replied an hour later with a simple, "Thank you. I owe you one." She didn't think much of it until the following Monday when she found a coffee waiting on her desk. It was from the place across the street. The one that cost twice as much as the office coffee, but actually tasted good. There was a sticky note attached for Friday. "Thanks, Daniel." Olivia smiled and tucked the note into her desk drawer. It was a small gesture, but it felt like something had changed between them. Not in a romantic way, not in a dramatic way, just in the quiet, steady way that trust gets built when two people decide they're willing to show up for each other. Over the next few weeks, they fell into an easy rhythm. They didn't hang out outside of work. They didn't text each other about personal things, but they talked more. Daniel told her about his daughter's soccer games. Olivia told him about the online class she was taking. They had lunch together once in the break room and it wasn't awkward. It was just comfortable, like they had figured out how to exist in the same space without needing to perform or explain themselves. One afternoon, Olivia was walking past Daniel's desk when she saw a framed photo she had never noticed before. It was small, tucked behind his monitor, but she could see it clearly now. A woman with dark hair and a bright smile holding a little girl who was maybe 3 or 4 years old. The woman looked happy, the kind of happy that came from the inside, not from trying to look good for a camera. Olivia didn't say anything about it, but she understood now in a way she hadn't before. Daniel wasn't waiting because he couldn't find someone. He was waiting because the person he had loved was irreplaceable. And moving on didn't mean forgetting. It meant figuring out how to carry that love forward without letting it crush him. She thought about that a lot over the next few days. About how easy it was to assume you knew someone's story just because you saw them every day. About how much people carried in silence because it was easier than explaining. About how kindness didn't always look like grand gestures or loud declarations. Sometimes it just looked like showing up, like listening, like not making someone feel like they had to justify their pain. The next time someone at the office made a joke about Daniel being antisocial, Olivia didn't laugh. She didn't make a scene. She just said, maybe he's not antisocial. Maybe he just has a life outside of this place that matters more to him than small talk. The person looked at her confused and then changed the subject. It wasn't much, but it was enough. One evening, a few weeks later, Olivia was packing up her things when Daniel walked over to her desk. He had his coat on, his bag over his shoulder, and he looked like he was about to leave. But instead of heading for the elevator, he stopped in front of her desk and said, "My daughter has a soccer game this Saturday. It's at 10 o'clock in the morning. If you're not busy, you're welcome to come." Olivia looked up at him, surprised. "Really?" Daniel nodded. "You don't have to, but I thought I'd ask." Olivia smiled. "I'd like that." Daniel gave a small nod, then turned and walked toward the elevator. Olivia watched him go, feeling something warm and quiet settle in her chest. It wasn't a big moment. It wasn't a turning point, but it was real. And that was enough. Saturday morning came and Olivia showed up at the field wearing jeans and a jacket, holding a cup of coffee she had picked up on the way. Daniel was already there, standing on the sideline next to a girl with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. The girl looked exactly like the woman in the photo, but with Daniel's serious eyes. When Olivia walked over, Daniel introduced them. "This is Emma," he said. "Emma, this is Olivia. She works with me." Emma looked at Olivia with the kind of cautious curiosity that 10-year-olds had perfected. "Hi," she said. Olivia smiled. "Hi. Your dad says you're really good at soccer." Emma shrugged, but she was smiling. "I'm okay," she said. Then she ran off to join her team. Olivia and Daniel stood on the sideline together, watching the game in comfortable silence. Emma scored a goal in the second half, and Daniel clapped, his face breaking into a rare, genuine smile. Olivia cheered, too, and when Emma looked over at them, she waved. Daniel waved back. After the game, Emma ran over, sweaty and grinning. Daniel handed her a water bottle and told her she did great. Emma looked at Olivia and said, "Are you my dad's friend?" Olivia glanced at Daniel, then back at Emma. "Yeah," she said. "I think so." Emma nodded, satisfied, and then ran off to talk to her teammates. Daniel looked at Olivia, and for the first time since she had met him, he looked like he wasn't carrying quite as much weight. "Thanks for coming," he said. Olivia smiled. "Thanks for inviting me." They didn't say much else. They didn't need to. They just stood there watching Emma laugh with her friends. And it felt like something had quietly, carefully, finally settled into place. Not a happy ending, not a resolution, just a beginning. The kind that didn't announce itself with fireworks or grand declarations. The kind that happened when two people decided to stop hiding and start showing up. And maybe that was the point. That waiting didn't mean being stuck. It meant being patient enough to let the right moments find you and kind enough to recognize them when they did.